Try it right now. Tickle your own palm with your finger. Feels like basically nothing, right? Now imagine someone else doing the exact same motion. Suddenly you'd be squirming and laughing uncontrollably. Same touch, same spot, same pressure, wildly different reaction. So what's actually going on in your brain that makes this happen? The answer involves a part of your brain that's basically a built-in prediction machine. And stick around, because there's a genuinely strange exception to this rule involving mental illness. Some people actually can tickle themselves, and it reveals a lot about how the brain works. Let's get into it. First, scientists actually split tickling into two totally different types. The first is called nasmesis. That's the light, feathery kind. Think of a bug crawling on your skin or a feather brushing your arm. It usually just causes a mild urge to scratch, not laughter. The second type is called gargalesis. This is the laughing, squirming kind. It requires firmer, repeated pressure, usually on specific sensitive spots. Ribs, underarms, feet, and the neck are classic ticklish zones for most people. Gargalesis is the one we're really talking about today. Now here's the core idea behind why you can't tickle yourself. Deep in your brain sits a region called the cerebellum. One of its jobs is predicting the sensations caused by your own movements. Every time you move your hand, your cerebellum sends out a forecast. It says, essentially, here's exactly what this movement is about to feel like. That forecast gets compared against the actual sensation the moment it happens. If the prediction matches the real feeling closely, your brain dampens the response. It basically says, we already knew this was coming, no need to react strongly. That dampening is why your own tickling attempts barely register as anything. So why does someone else's exact same touch feel completely different? Simple. Your cerebellum can't predict someone else's movements nearly as precisely. Even if you know it's coming, you don't know the exact timing, pressure, or rhythm. That small gap between prediction and reality is enough to keep the sensation vivid. Unfiltered, vivid sensation on a sensitive area is exactly what triggers that laughing response. It's not really about who's touching you. It's about how predictable that touch is. This prediction system actually has a specific scientific name worth knowing. It's called an efference copy. Every time your brain sends a command to move a muscle, it keeps a copy of that command. One copy goes to your muscles. The other copy goes toward predicting the sensory outcome. This isn't just about tickling either. It's a huge part of how you experience your whole body. It's part of why you don't feel surprised every time you take a normal step while walking. Your brain already expects the sensation of your foot hitting the ground. Tickling is really just a fun, obvious example of a system that's working constantly in the background. This idea isn't just a theory. It's actually been tested in a clever experiment. In the 1990s, researcher Sarah Jane Blakemore built an actual tickling machine. Participants controlled a robotic arm that tickled their own palm. When they moved the controls themselves, the tickle barely registered, just like using their own hand. But researchers added a small delay between the person's action and the machine's touch. Even a delay of a fraction of a second made the tickle feel noticeably more intense. That tiny gap was enough to break the brain's perfect prediction. It was solid proof that timing and predictability are the real key to this whole effect. Here's a fun bit of history. This exact question is genuinely ancient. The philosopher Aristotle wrote about tickling and laughter over 2,000 years ago. He wondered specifically why we can't produce the same effect on ourselves. Centuries later, Charles Darwin also wrote about tickling in his research on emotional expression. In his 1872 work on emotions, he specifically discussed why self-tickling fails to produce laughter. It's genuinely satisfying that modern neuroscience finally answered a question thinkers wondered about for millennia. Now here's the genuinely surprising twist I mentioned earlier. Some research has found that certain people with schizophrenia can tickle themselves. That sounds strange, but it actually makes complete sense given what we just learned. Schizophrenia can involve differences in how the brain distinguishes self-generated actions from external ones. If that self-prediction system doesn't dampen signals normally, self-touch can feel much more vivid. Researchers have actually studied this specific effect as a window into how the condition affects the brain. It's a rare case where a strange exception actually helps confirm the original theory. Let's zoom out. Why are we ticklish in the first place? What's the evolutionary point? One leading theory is called the defense reflex idea. Notice that classic ticklish spots, ribs, neck, underarms, are also vulnerable areas in a fight. The theory suggests ticklishness evolved partly to make us protectively flinch and guard those exact spots. A ticklish reflex that makes you squirm away could have helped protect vital areas from harm. There's also a strong social theory layered on top of this. Tickling mostly happens between people who trust each other, like family, friends, or partners. Some researchers think it may have evolved as a bonding and play behavior, especially between parents and children. So ticklishness might actually serve two purposes at once: protection and social bonding. There's actually supporting evidence for the bonding theory in how early this behavior appears. Babies as young as a few months old already respond to tickling with laughter. This happens well before infants can understand jokes or humor in any other sense. That suggests tickle laughter is a very early, hardwired social signal between caregiver and child. It may help strengthen early bonding and trust before verbal communication is even possible. Interestingly, infants generally can't be tickled by themselves either, for the exact same brain reasons we covered. The prediction system appears to develop early, right alongside the social value of being tickled by someone else. Here's a fun question. Do animals experience ticklishness the way we do? Surprisingly, yes, at least in some species that have been studied closely. Rats are the most famous example. Researchers have actually tickled lab rats extensively. When tickled, rats emit high-pitched ultrasonic chirps, too high for humans to hear normally. Scientists interpret these chirps as the rat equivalent of laughter. Rats even started seeking out the tickling hand afterward, similar to how kids ask to be tickled again. Great apes, our closest relatives, also show ticklish responses very similar to human laughter. This suggests the roots of ticklishness go back a very long way in our evolutionary history. This raises another interesting question. Why does laughter specifically happen during tickling at all? Laughter itself involves a different, somewhat separate brain circuit from basic touch processing. It engages areas linked to emotional and social processing, not just physical sensation. That's part of why tickle laughter can happen even when the sensation feels intense or overwhelming. It's a blend of a physical reflex and a social, emotional response happening together. Some researchers even think this dual nature is exactly why tickling feels so strange to describe. It's genuinely both fun and a little overwhelming at the very same time. Modern researchers haven't stopped studying this either. Some labs use advanced robotic devices to precisely control tickle timing and pressure. This lets scientists study exactly how much delay or unpredictability is needed to trigger a reaction. Some researchers are even interested in this for understanding robotic and prosthetic touch feedback. Understanding self versus other touch could help design better sensory feedback in artificial limbs. A question that started as a curious party trick has real modern research applications. Quick pause before we continue. Take a guess. Do you think you could ever train yourself to tickle your own feet successfully? Not really, no? As long as your brain can predict the motion, the effect stays blocked. Even repeated practice doesn't really change this, since prediction is the whole mechanism. Let's clear up a few myths before we wrap up. Myth 1. Ticklishness has nothing to do with the brain, it's just a skin reaction. False. We just showed it's almost entirely about brain prediction, not just nerve endings. Myth 2. Everyone is equally ticklish. Also false. Ticklishness varies a lot between individuals, and some people report barely feeling it at all. Myth 3. Laughing during tickling always means genuine enjoyment. Not necessarily true. Tickle laughter can sometimes be an involuntary reflex response, even if it feels overwhelming rather than fun. This is actually why consent and stopping when asked matters, even during playful tickling. Myth 4. Ticklishness in feet means you have unusually sensitive nerve endings there. Not exactly. Foot sensitivity varies, but the prediction mechanism matters far more than raw nerve density. Myth 5. You can build up a tolerance to tickling over time with enough exposure. Mostly false for true gargalesis tickling. The core brain mechanism doesn't really weaken with repetition. Some people do learn to mask or suppress the outward reaction, but the underlying response mechanism stays the same. Let's wrap up with a few fun extra facts. The word gargalesis actually comes from an ancient Greek word related to laughter. Some people are so sensitive to tickling that even the anticipation alone can cause laughter. This is called anticipatory response, and it shows prediction works both ways. There's even documented research on self-tickling using mirrors to create a delayed visual illusion. In some setups, this partially tricks the brain into a slightly stronger reaction than normal self-touch. It's a clever, low-tech way researchers found to nudge the brain's prediction system. Here's one more strange fact. Tickling has actually been used historically as a form of punishment. Ancient records mention prolonged tickling being used deliberately to cause genuine distress. It's a good reminder that the exact same physical act can feel completely different depending on context and control. On a lighter note, ticklishness also appears to vary somewhat across different reported cultural contexts. Though the core brain mechanism we described appears to be universal among humans everywhere. One last fun fact before the recap. Some comedians and performers have studied tickle laughter specifically to understand involuntary audience reactions. The idea is that genuine, involuntary laughter shares surprising overlap with the tickle response in the brain. Both seem to rely on that same mix of surprise, release, and social context we covered earlier. Okay, let's bring this all together. You can't tickle yourself because your cerebellum predicts your own movements almost perfectly. That prediction dampens the sensation before it ever becomes ticklish laughter. Other people's touch stays unpredictable, which keeps the sensation vivid enough to trigger a reaction. A real tickling machine experiment proved timing and delay are the actual key mechanism. And in rare cases, like some experiences of schizophrenia, this self-prediction system can behave differently. Ticklishness likely evolved for both protection and social bonding, and it isn't unique to humans. All from one simple, everyday observation almost nobody stops to actually question. If this answered a question you never knew you had, that's exactly what this channel is about. So if you enjoyed this, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. It genuinely helps this channel grow, and it takes about 2 seconds. Drop a comment and tell me which part surprised you the most. Was it the tickle machine study? The rat laughter? Let me know. And if you like this video, go ahead and tap that like button. It's a small click that genuinely helps this channel keep growing. There are hundreds of everyday questions just like this one waiting to be explored. Things you've experienced your whole life, but never actually questioned. That's what this channel is all about. Toggling your curiosity on, one question at a time. One more thing before you go. Tap that notification bell too, so you actually see it when the next video drops. Next time, we're tackling why flamingos stand on one leg for hours without falling over. It's a surprisingly clever energy-saving trick, and you will not guess the mechanism. I'll see you in the next one.